System check. Confirmation target. One tiny river droplet is about to reveal a huge hidden river inside every body.
From one tiny drop to huge inner rivers, how many worlds of blood are we drinking every day?
System check. Confirmation target. Global river shapes now align with a huge inner vessel web.
Tiny vessel maps echo huge river patterns all across the living planet.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny human beside a huge river carries an even larger hidden blood river inside.
From this tiny body, a huge network of inner rivers echoes the flow of the surface water. Confirmation target. Tiny light rivers under the skin mirror a huge inner flow. From one tiny patch of skin, a huge network of living rivers comes into view. System check. Confirmation target. Tiny light beneath the skin reveals a huge inner river. From one tiny patch of skin, a huge luminous river network stretches through the body.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny observer now reads a huge map of flowing rivers.
From one tiny viewpoint, a huge hierarchy of rivers becomes visible at once. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny matching pattern bridges a huge divide between rivers and blood. A tiny change in this shared pattern can reshape huge rivers inside and outside the body. Confirmation target. One tiny woman by a river carries a huge hidden exchange with the world. From one tiny host at the bank, a huge unseen web connects many inner rivers to the same water. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny droplet story joins a huge planetary river of water and blood.
System check. Confirmation target. Surface river identified as a huge flow that carries tiny hidden worlds.
From one tiny droplet, a huge inner river of blood waits to be revealed. System check. Confirmation target. Single tiny droplet is now a gateway into a huge inner world. From a tiny surface point, a huge tunnel of liquid opens beneath the skin of the droplet.
System check. Confirmation target. Water clusters are reorganizing into a huge living river of blood. Tiny red cells now travel as boats along a huge capillary river.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny capillary segment carries a huge share of the blood flow.
Tiny shifts in one narrow channel can cause huge changes across the whole river network. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny blood cell, tiny molecular clusters now form a huge environment that shapes every drop of blood.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny organic trace hides inside a huge molecular sea.
A tiny foreign fragment can trigger a huge response inside the bloodstream. System check. Confirmation target. Droplet contact between huge river and tiny human gateway confirmed. A tiny touch of river water can feed a huge inner bloodstream.
System check. Confirmation target. A tiny surface channel now feeds a huge hidden capillary gate. Tiny gaps between surface cells open into a huge three-dimensional maze of tissue and blood.
System check. Confirmation target. Inside this tiny patch of mucosa, a huge network of vessels waits just beyond the surface.
System check. Confirmation target. Tiny fluid threads are crossing into a huge inner tissue space.
One tiny stream from the surface now feeds a huge capillary river below. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny trace of river water now rides inside a huge stream of red cells.
System check. Confirmation target. Single capillary wall section shows a tiny barrier with a huge exchange effect.
Within this tiny wall, a huge transfer of water and gases shapes the tissue around it. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny red cell now leads us along a huge hidden river. One tiny passenger from the river now crosses a huge distance inside this single vessel.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny red cell boat drifts through a huge, narrow blood river.
Tiny currents in this narrow river help sustain huge regions of the body.
System check. Confirmation target. One
A tiny
choke in
slowdown
this
at this
vessel
pinch
forces
point sends a
huge red
huge
cell
wave
to
of
squeeze
traffic
and
through the
deform.
micro river.
System check. Confirmation target. One tiny water cluster is dwarfed by a huge red cell world.
Tiny structures beside one cell reveal a huge jump in scale inside a single drop of blood. Confirmation target. Single river particle is now mapped across a huge journey from open water to capillary blood.
One tiny tracked path reveals a huge hidden network of connected rivers inside the body.
System check. Confirmation target. Tiny gas particles here drive a huge exchange between blood and tissue.
Tiny gas trades in one capillary support huge waves of energy through the body. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny red cell carries a huge map of its traveled rivers. Tiny tracks on one cell reveal a huge atlas of hidden blood rivers. Confirmation target. A tiny capillary branch feeds into a huge vascular web. From one tiny thread of blood, a huge branching forest of vessels fills the organ. Confirmation target. One tiny inner river mirrors a huge surface river in shape and flow. Tiny capillary loops repeat the huge curves of the open river inside the body. One tiny branch, a huge share of supply,
System
reaches
check.
a quiet
Confirmation
corner of the
target.
body.
One ultra-tiny capillary
System
branch
check.
channels flow
Confirmation
into a
target.
huge hidden vessel
One
forest.
tiny blockage traps a huge red cell inside this narrow river.
Tiny delays at this choke point can send huge waves of traffic through the micro river.
System check. Confirmation target. One outer tissue cell faces a tiny vessel that carries a huge inner river.
From one tiny contact patch, a huge territory of tissue draws its blood supply. Confirmation target. One tiny path links a huge water cycle from river to blood. One tiny droplet story hints at a huge hidden water cycle through every body. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny water trace is preparing to leave a huge inner river. From one tiny escape point, a huge path opens beyond the bloodstream.
System check. Confirmation target. Tiny wall structures control a huge blood interface.
System check. Confirmation target. Tiny surface forces build into a huge load on this vessel wall.
Tiny pushes from moving cells create huge stress patterns along the inner river. System check. Confirmation target. One tiny data point now reveals a huge hidden river model. A tiny mapped node opens into a huge field of connected inner rivers.
From one tiny river droplet to huge inner rivers of blood, every sip hides a universe of flowing worlds.
System check. Confirmation target. If this tiny to huge journey inspires you, like, share, and subscribe to Tiny to Huge.